Hello wonderful world, Elaine here and welcome back to my channel. Today's video is going to be a February and March reading wrap up, which I definitely should have split into two separate videos because I have 14 books to cover in this video. Great reading months. I am literally at, I think, 19 books read out of my 50 that I want to read for the year, so I might end up increasing the goal if I keep up this momentum. If I hit a reading slump, then the 50 is gonna stay what it is. But yeah, without further ado, let's talk about the 14 books that I read in February and March. So the first one is Angels and Demons by Dan Brown. This is the first book with the character Robert Langdon, who I believe appears in the Da Vinci Code. This is a mystery and thriller that takes place in Vatican City. So Robert Langdon is a professor of religion and he's an expert on the Illuminati. And he's called into Vatican City because there was a mysterious death and they need his expertise to kind of help solve who committed the murder, what's going on, and there's this whole larger plot and conversation about Christianity and science versus religion, and it was very, very fascinating. I ended up giving it 4 stars because while I really liked it, by the end it was really drawing out and I was like, okay, come on, let's wrap it up. I did really enjoy the intrigue of it all, and I think the conversations around religion and science and the history of those two, the history of those two things and how they used to be together and now they're not together, and that was very fascinating as the backdrop for this mystery, so I did really like that book. The next one is, this is a mouthful, okay, so I'm gonna try my best. The Making of Biblical Womanhood, How the Subjugation of Women Became the Gospel Truth by Beth Allison Barr. Okay, got through it. This is a non-fiction book, again about religion. I was kind of on a religion kick in February because I got obsessed with the idea of womb envy at IDK, guys. This book is about how the evangelical church has created this idea of complementarianism, I think that's how you say it, which is the idea that men and women have their own roles and they're supposed to complement each other. And so the man is the leader and the protector and all this stuff, and then the woman is the homemaker and the supporter. This book kind of talks about how evangelical churches teach this to young girls by using Bible verses and Bible stories, but the author kind of flips that on its head and proves that the Bible never actually said those things, and instead men have been cherry-picking Bible verses to back up their sexism and misogyny. And it was really interesting because the author herself is a Christian. She is an evangelical Christian. And so it was interesting to see her perspective of, you know, I love my religion, I have great hope for it, and here's what it's doing wrong, and here's what it should be doing better in the future. And that was a really interesting take. I think I went into it thinking that it was kind of going to be attacking religion, and it is, but it's also presenting like a better future for her own church. I gave that one 4 stars as well. I thought it was really cool because it talks about history of like translations of the Bible and how in early versions of the Bible women actually had more power, but through translations and the word choices that were made when translating things from, like, let's say Latin to English, the people who were translating it purposefully changed words to kind of take away the power and prevalence that women had in the Bible. So I thought that that was a really interesting, unique perspective that I hadn't thought about before. And I don't really know a lot of Bible stories. I know the main ones, and I do feel like the ones I know revolve heavily around men. So this author presented a lot of stories of women doing really cool things in the Bible that I had never heard of, and she was kind of showing how those have been pushed aside to create this ideal role of what a Christian woman should look like, when in reality the women in the Bible were actually like fighting dragons, and they actually were like ministers and doing all these cool things that I had didn't even know about. So I myself am not super religious, so I don't know, it was still a really fascinating read, especially growing up in Kentucky around Baptist churches and Baptist teachings. I really enjoyed this perspective. Okay, the next one that I read is Dear America, Notes from an Undocumented Citizen by Jose Antonio Verges. This is another nonfiction. It is a memoir by this man, Jose. He was brought to America from the Philippines when he was 11 years old. And when he was 16, he went to get a license to drive, and he discovered that his green card was fake. And so he was living in the United States undocumented. And it tells his story going into adulthood and having to figure out you know, how to find housing and how to get a job and how to live in America as an undocumented person. And he really flips on its head what it means to be an American citizen. I also rated this book 4 stars. I listened to this one on audiobook, and it was really, really good because the author reads it himself, and so he could kind of tell the stories in the way that he intended it to be told. So I would highly recommend the audiobook version. I also think that if you have ever had questions like, why don't people just become citizens? Like, why don't they just pull up to the courthouse and like become a citizen? Or like, why don't they come here the legal way? I don't understand. If you've ever had questions about that, this book is one that you should read, because it talks about why it is so hard to come to America legally and why it's not as easy as some people think it is to just like become a citizen. It's actually really hard and expensive and time consuming, and it's kept that way on purpose. And this book kind of touches on those themes, but it also adds such a human level to it because it's his own story and his own memoir, and he's able to provide specific stories and examples of how being undocumented affected his psyche and his mental health and his ability to form relationships and, you know, just like set up a life somewhere. Definitely highly recommend that one as well, especially with everything going on in the world. If you are looking for a way to do something but you don't know what to do, I think learning is always the answer, because those in power don't want us to learn. They want us to stay in the dark about things, right? So the more that we can learn, the more that we gain empathy, and the more that we are equipped to create change and fight back in our horrible system right now. Okay, then I read Wuthering Heights by Emily Bronte. This was a reread for me. I read this maybe like a year or two ago for the first time, but I wanted to reread it before the movie came out just because it was everywhere, and I was like, you know what, let me just reread it. I still really like this book. It's another 4 stars. I really love Wuthering Heights, and I think it's so unique in the way that it's told, you know, through like these unreliable narrators and through word of mouth and through diary entries and letters. It's told in such a unique way, and I think that a lot of that is lost, especially with the conversations happening around the movie. You know, everything's about like the romance. And I fear that this book is more of a horror to me than a romance. Like, it's about generational trauma and toxic relationships and racism and privilege, and I feel like it's more horrid than it is happy for me. But I do really like it. It's a 4 star for me because it's not like my all-time favorite classic, but it is one that I really enjoy. Next one that I read is Small Things Like These by Claire Keegan. This is a really short novel about a man in 1980s Ireland. This man is a coal merchant, and he discovers a local convent that is abusing young women who are unwed mothers. It's kind of this story of hope and connection and community, because, you know, he could have turned a blind eye to the treatment of these girls in his town, and it's a story of, I don't know, like human connection and him making a choice. And I think I gave this 3.5 stars because I do feel like while I really enjoyed it, there was some room for more like emotional growth and development that I was missing a little bit. It takes place over Christmas. Maybe save it for your December TBR if you want like a very hopeful, quick read. Then I read Project Hail Mary by Andy Weir, and oh my goodness, did I love this book. It is a sci-fi about a man who wakes up on a spaceship and he has no memory of how he got there or what he's supposed to be doing or even who he is. And so he's in outer space, totally alone, and he has to figure out what he is supposed to be doing and potentially save humanity along the way. What I loved about this book was that while it was super science heavy and very intellectual in that realm, it was also this beautiful story of companionship and like working together for a greater cause. It kind of left me feeling hopeful of like, guys, if we all work together, we could create a beautiful world, you know? I went to see the movie this month as well when it came out, and just fantastic. They did such a great job at bringing this story to life, and I will say, having read the book before seeing the movie, I do really think enhanced my movie experience because there are some really important scientific details left out of the movie. And also, I felt more emotionally connected to the characters when I was watching the movie because I had read the book. I don't know, like both the movie and the book were just so well done. And I'm like newer to the sci-fi genre. This was one of the first actual sci-fi books I've ever read, I think. and I definitely enjoyed it, and it made me want to seek out more science fiction in the future. Then I read Nobody's Girl, a memoir of surviving abuse and fighting for justice by Virginia Roberts Giuffre. Virginia is a survivor of Jeffrey Epstein, and it is her memoir telling her story about how she got brought into that world, the abuse she suffered in that world, and the trauma and fear that she continued to experience after she got out. Gosh, this book is a really hard read. I think it's important to read, especially given the context of like what is going on in the world and like who our world leaders are and how they are all tied into this horrible like system of abuse of young girls. It is a lot. It was very like harrowing and traumatic and difficult, but like I said, I think that it's really important, especially because I think it gave Virginia a sense of like empowerment of taking back the story and allowing her to tell it on her own terms and call out who she wanted to call out. But then there's also these happy moments of her, you know, with her kids and life after. Unfortunately, she's no longer alive. She did take her own life, which I think added a whole nother horrid layer to this story. But it continues to show you how when you are a victim of abuse, especially in the way that Virginia was, you never do escape. It's with you forever. And I think that men don't always realize that, and it's easy to be like, oh, move on, but like you can't move on. But because that cycle never ends and it is almost impossible to move on and abandon the trauma and psychological, you know, unease that comes with living an experience like that, that's why it's so important to continue to call out the people that were involved in this. I don't even know what to call it, like scandal, because it, like, I'll just say like abuse. We need to continue to call out the men who were, the men and women who were involved in this abuse, and to continue to fight for justice on behalf of these women. Like I said, not a fun reading experience, but an important one. I did not rate this book. I just feel like that would be weird. Next is total switch up, Female Fantasy by Aman Harii Kia. This was the most beautiful love letter to romantasy readers. I did give it 3 stars because some of the plot was a little bit out there. Basically, it's about a girl who is obsessed with this romantasy series that's giving ACOTAR, and she keeps breaking up with her boyfriends in real life because none of them can measure up to the male main character from this book series, right? So when she finds out that the male main character is based off of a real person, she decides to track him down and make him fall in love with her, as one does. And the plot that ensues when she goes to after this man is just like so insane. But I do feel like it serves the purpose of showing you that life can be just as romantic and adventurous as our books if only we're willing to look for it. So it was super cute. I flew through it. I read it so quickly. The romance was great. There's some steamy scenes and it was just laugh out loud funny, and there's a great group of friends, so that was also like another layer of wholesomeness. But yeah, it was kind of out there, but I did really enjoy it, so I give it 3 stars. Then I listened to Listen for the Lie by Amy Tintera on audiobook. This was probably the most well-produced audiobook I've ever listened to. The main character name is Lucy. Her best friend was murdered 5 years ago and no one knows who did it. A lot of people assume it was Lucy because she was with her best friend on the night, but she has amnesia. So she has no idea what happened. So it's 5 years later, she's moved away, she's trying to put it behind her, when a true crime podcaster decides to dig into the murder himself and solve it. And so she's brought back to her hometown, back into the story, back into the murder, and is finally forced to confront what happened and figure it out once and for all. The reason that the audiobook was so good is because there were multiple voice actors. It was just so well produced and engaging. So there are clips from the guy's actual true crime podcast, and there was theme music and interviews with multiple voice actors. It was just so well done that I flew through this one as well because I couldn't stop listening to it because of how engaging it was. I gave this 4 out of 5 stars. I really enjoyed the story, and I had a lot of fun with that one. Next I read Sunrise on the Reaping by Suzanne Collins. I also did this one on audio because it was available at my library. I figured I would read it again. I don't know why I put myself through that trauma again, because Sunrise on the Reaping is insanely sad. Seeing that on the big screen is going to be crazy. And if you don't know, it's the prequel to The Hunger Games. It's Haymitch's story. It's the second quarter quell, so there's double the amount of kids, double the amount of deaths, and double the amount of sadness. I think I gave Sunrise on the Reaping basically everything is 4 stars. I gave that 4 stars as well. And I read Dungeon Crawler Carl by Matt Denneman. Oh my gosh, I did not think I would like this. It's basically our world, okay? And these aliens come and they destroy all the buildings and they flatten everything. So if you were inside when the aliens came, you die immediately. But if you were outside, you are alive and you are able to enter through a portal to a dungeon that they have built underground. These aliens have built a dungeon underground and you can go down there, and it's basically Dungeons and Dragons meets the Hunger Games because it is televised and you are trying to level up and kill mobs and monsters, and you can earn special skills. That's basically it. And the main guy, Carl, enters the dungeon with his cat, Princess Donut. And together they must kill things and level up and hope that they make it far enough. Because if you die in the dungeon, you die in real life. So, you know, they're fighting for their lives in there. It's so funny and so engaging. And I didn't think I would like it because there's no romance, there's no kissing. What? But I loved it. Isn't that crazy? Same with Project Hail Mary. What's going on with me? Is my brain fully developing? I do turn 25 this month. Oh my god. So fun. Highly recommend. That book was also 4 stars for me. I don't know. Then I read The Hunger Games by Suzanne Collins. I did a little reread. That book just ages like fine wine. It just gets better with time and it gets more politically poignant and the themes are just everlasting. I just am so impressed every time I reread it by the brilliance of Suzanne Collins's simplicity, because these are young adult books. They're for young adults. I read them in middle school, and I am so grateful that I was exposed to these themes and these characters at such a young age, because I do believe they made me who I am. But not only is The Hunger Games like laugh out loud funny, and there's great wholesome romance, and there's action and adventure, but there's also such deep themes about, you know, our world and our political systems and war. It's just so brilliant. God, I love The Hunger Games. 5 stars, always. Then I read A Song for the Wild Built by Becky Chambers. This was a cozy sci-fi. It takes place on a planet where humans have created robots. These robots have become conscious and they decided, frick you humans, we're gonna go off into the wilderness where there's no human intervention, like do not bug us, we're going away. And the humans agreed, they signed this treaty, and it's been years and years and years later, and this tea monk decides that they want a new adventure, and so they go out into the woods and they come in contact with one of the robots, and the two of them have such philosophical conversations about what it means to be alive and to have a purpose. And I don't know, it was just the most wholesome read. It was so cozy. In fact, the dedication is literally for those who need a break. And it just felt like a warm hug, a kiss on the forehead. I don't know, it was so cute. And I highly recommend this for anyone who just needs to feel grounded and like just to chill out, because I think this book reminded me not to put so much pressure on myself and on life and on finding a purpose. Like, it's okay to just vibe. And this book reminded me of that. And it's got such a cozy setting of like this wilderness, and the main character has a van, like a tea van. It's kind of giving RV, and they take it out into the wilderness and just, I don't know, have a fun adventure with a robot. Very wholesome. Would definitely recommend. I gave that 4 stars as well. And then the last book, which was also 4 stars, that I read was Here for the Right Reasons by Jodi McAllister. I actually read this yesterday in one sitting. It is a romance novel. So good. It is a reality TV show setting. So it's basically The Bachelor. And the main character goes on the show because she desperately needs money, and she sees it as her ticket to, first you get paid to be on the show, but she's also like, I could be an influencer and ride this wave for a few years and make some extra cash while I finish getting my master's and not have to worry about rent. And it also takes place during the pandemic, so she was really strapped for cash because she lost her job in retail. She actually gets eliminated on the first night, but she's not allowed to leave because it's the pandemic. So romance ensues from there. It is so cute. It's also just really well written, and the main characters, the main guy and the main girl, have such great background stories and thoughts and desires and themes that have nothing to do with romance. So I feel like it was just such a well-developed story as well. Both of them, you know, have pasts that they talk about, and there are a lot of good conversations that the two of them have. And so I feel like the author just did a really great job at writing this like really well-developed, well-written story of romance and fun. It's laugh out loud funny. It was so cute and wholesome. I don't know, I literally read it in one sitting because I could not stop because I had so much fun, and I immediately downloaded another one of her books. Her name is Jodi McAllister, if I didn't say that. But I got another one of her books immediately, and I will be diving into that tonight. She's earning a spot on my list of favorite romance writers just from that one book, just because of how, like, I just really appreciate when the main character in a romance book has a whole life outside of the romance, you know? Like has friends and a family and a career that's well developed and doesn't feel superficial. The main character in this book, her name is Cece, and she is studying criminology. She's a master's student, and she's studying that because of her experiences in foster care. So, I don't know, it's just refreshing to see like a really well thought out and well developed female main character. And on that note, those are the 14 books that I read in February and March. Great reading months, seriously. And I think I read a little bit of everything, I feel like. So, I don't know. Let me know what your favorite read of March was for you. And yeah, thanks for watching. Wherever you are, I hope you are doing oh so well, and I will talk to you soon. Happy reading!